the just external biomarkers are very positive. It's like, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I feel good.
Yeah, if you feel good, that's
I mean, and I mean, I feel good and I'm sleeping good.
Bald head noggins report.
Woohoo!
You gotta be bald to be a noggin. It's not bald head noggins. I think I go through this every show. It's bald noggins. Like Mike would say, that's kind of redundant to say bald head noggins.
Yeah. You know what the crazy thing? If you look up the
I know that's why I brought it up. Go
well,
ahead,
no, but I mean, if you look up the term, the definition of redundant, it doesn't even fit.
I know. I say everything back asswards.
There you go.
Well, anyway, hey, we're discussing. We've got a special guest. Obviously, if you've been following our show, it's Chris and Mike, my brother, and we got Tim is on board. Actually experiencing something quite, some people would say traumatic, as far as life experiences. He's dealing with the big C, and I'm going to let Tim, kind of explain to us and those watching or listening what exactly is going on in his life that kind of is piquing our interest anyway. So unless Mike has something to throw in there, I will let Tim. Mike, you got anything to?
No.
All right.
Go for it.
All right, Tim.
Well, thanks, guys. It's great to be with you, you competent pilots. Yes. Well, anyway, I'm yes, back to the big C thing. Yes, the word cancer.
Yes, cancer.
The word cancer is involved. And but as a little bit of background, I'll get to where I actually am, and then you'll have some sort of idea, a much more bigger context for the moment that I find myself in. So a whole bunch of years, we had the COVID thing, we had all kinds of crazy stuff going on. The politics were wild. Everything was just, this what they call the psychological warfare elements were just crazy, wild, all that sort of stuff. And a long time ago, I remember when Facebook came out, this is the first time I've been technologically present to the public. I haven't posted anything on Facebook in decades, nothing anywhere really. And LinkedIn, any of that stuff. There were attempts here and there to think about it, but by the time I got through losing my password and all that stuff, I just said to hell with it. So
this is like the perfect storm.
This is the perfect storm. Everything just bringing together here. It's like the bomb cyclone. This is a result of the bomb cyclone. We look out the window, that's the remnants of the bomb cyclone. This is sort of like in the wake of that bomb cyclone. But anyway, in the midst of all that stuff, and I grew up, kind of an anxious lad with a lot more anxiety than the rest of my fellows. I went to 12 schools just for background. I traveled, moved around a lot, and I didn't. I wasn't. My body didn't handle the input very well. Whatever was going through, to be generous to everybody. I'm not here to, get into the weeds. But I left home kind of a little psychologically sideways, or a little neurotic, or a lot neurotic. I dealt with anxiety and stuff, and the typical wound up in the Army. But when I was in the Army, I realized after I graduated from high school, it banged around for a few years. I wound up in the Army in Germany for 3 years, and everybody was like me. I mean, it was just the most amazing experience because everybody drank a lot, or everybody did drugs a lot. And I mean, everybody. You go to the NCO club, you go to the officers club, there's people being jailed and thrown out. But somehow I was head of personnel, a listed guy on a C9, with a E9 kind of position where I had a really good view of 2,000 people that I was, over in terms of their reassignments and promotions and enlisted efficiency reports and all the stuff they do that constitutes their life. And it was just astonishing to me that a very small minority of people were really what I consider just sane and sober and sort of competent. But everybody was sort of competent in their dilemma. You know what I mean? They were all pretty nuts, but they got the job done. Every morning, the efficiency report showed up. Everybody stood in line.
Not like
They were hungover,
the night before,
but they all stood in line. It was just, and this is like a perspective over many, many decades. But I look back and I go, wow, it actually worked. I mean, in Europe, there was 250,000 people. And I know we had the cheapest beer, the cheapest cigarettes, the cheapest everything on the European continent, which kept the European economy going. So everybody, I'd say out of my office, we get ration cards. Most of the people were involved in the black market, paying their rent with whiskey and cigarettes and all that sort of stuff and drinking a lot. So mayhem and chaos and social, you just kind of grow up with this deep, it's anxiety, and you have coping mechanisms, you know what I mean? So you move through life, and life is crazy and all that stuff. And, but after a while, it kind of wears on you, you find yourself, it shows up here and there. And, and in the last 10 years, I would say 10 years, the dial got cranked up pretty high. I found myself in some pretty desperate situations, and I realized I really wanted to bring my anxiety down. Now, most of the time I do it with like 4 or 5 glasses of wine.
Right.
You know what I mean? It would bring my anxiety down, but
Everybody
other
else
people's
goes up.
anxiety up. There was always a trade-off in that brokerage. But anyway, at a certain point, I said, man, I gotta, I actually had a guy that was a psychotherapist, Veterans Administration, telling me who's on first, what's going on. And as much as I love my mother, I just didn't want to talk about her that much. It just got to be so redundant. I felt like I couldn't get off the ride. Once I'm on it, paying $125 an hour, $50, whatever it was. I said, this is crazy. So I quit. And it wasn't my first incident with counselors and stuff. I'd tried it before and it wasn't very successful. One day I'm online and this guy is on there and he uses the word well-being. He said, yeah, I got the shot and I achieved a state of well-being. I said, well-being? I don't ever hear anybody talk about well-being. I mean,
right.
And you got a shot for well-being, you know what I mean? And it was lasted and it, wasn't, like 3 glasses of good wine or a joint or whatever,
What was it? What did they give you?
I have it right in front of me. Commander.
Oh boy, we're all getting one.
Oh no, it's an Amway product.
It's not an Amway product. It's not. It's a whole different ride. But anyway, I found this thing, and basically, it's and I don't represent these people at all.
Okay.
But it's basically, I'll read what they have here. I got it right in front of me. It says, what I got is called a dual sympathetic reset. And basically what it does is it's a shot between your C4 and your C6 above your shoulder blades. And right in that area is what they call the stellate ganglia. The stellate ganglia is where the memories and the emotions kind of meet in your nervous system and they're filtered out. It's your freeze, fight, or flight zone. It's like a traffic circle with traffic lights. It's not a circle, but, you got a lot of traffic going on. And basically, it was developed in 1925, and they used to do it for people's back problems. But over time, they found out that, people got healed, their depression went away, their anxiety went away, all this kind of stuff. So a lot of our anxiety is physiological. It's not like you can talk it out. I mean, and it's physiological because you can take drugs for it. And the drugs add the chemical elements to affect the biochemistry in your body to make it happier or calmer or whatever.
Telling me that Special Operations is actually issuing that shot to war vets or whatever, combat vets. Is that? And,
yes, I've heard that. Yes.
Oh, I've heard it too. Yeah, I guess I heard it from you. I have never, and I didn't receive any while I was serving. I'd never even heard of it until you told me about it.
Right,
So,
right.
Maybe I just got in the wrong line at the.
You got in the wrong line, yeah. Probably could have been the wrong line. But anyway, this dual.
The wrong line.
It says, I'll just read it from the thing. It says, aims to reset the sympathetic nervous system by administering 2 injections of local anesthetic near the stellate ganglia, a cluster of nerves in the neck that regulates the body's fight or flight response. And basically, I got the shot 3 years ago, and it's made a lot of, enormous difference. Now, it doesn't solve your problems per se, but it does bring you down to a level of calmness that you can at least intelligently address them, and begin to find solutions and figure things out, and kind of, and from that, time, I quit drinking, and, and I just let things go. I just didn't need them anymore. It wasn't like I understood which were coping mechanisms and which weren't. I stopped drinking, and it was like moving from Idaho to Montana. It wasn't, oh, I'm in a different place. There wasn't any hand holding involved, or,
right.
Just
kind
of
meetings and all that.
No, just kind of happened. But I credit the stellate ganglia stuff, that reset that I got in the neck, and also just my own life and, spiritual stuff, and what I mean? But it got me to a place where I could at least begin to fit those puzzle pieces together better than they had been. It's like self-help. Self-help only works if there's a self to put it together.
Right,
if the self isn't around, it's kind of hard to help the self. You know what I mean? So anyway, so I had that go on. That was like 3 years ago, and it was really amazing. And to maintain that sensation, because it's nervous system stuff, I got this thing. It's called a Beamer mat. It's basically a muscle relaxant. It sends up, it creates a magnetic electromagnetic field, and basically increases the rate of flow in your blood, and also focuses on the microcirculation of your body. And I did that, and I don't know, whatever I am now. It's like I was 68 or 69 or something like that when that was going on. And I bought that machine right after I'd gotten the shot, because I didn't want it to go away. Because after the shot, I'm sitting to give you a sense of what was it like. I was sitting on the table with my gown, and he says, I'd waited like 20 minutes, and I'm sitting there, and he says, how do you feel? And it was, my head was really clear and calm and peaceful. And in my chest, I said, man, it feels like I'm getting a big hug. And the guy says, that's because anxiety scatters us. Trauma scatters our psyche. It blows it. This is sort of collecting it and reconnecting those things together. I said, wow, that's great. And I was with my friend. He drove me up there to Bellevue, Washington, where I got the shot. And we're on our way home. And because of the shots in your neck, you have trouble speaking, and it affects your larynx for about a half an hour. There's a little bit of a side effect, your larynx, and you cough a little bit, but really pretty modest. So after we get down to where we, you guys know where it is, that in Centralia, Washington, they got that McMinimans and that old pool hall. It's really a great place. Very, very cool place. But anyway, we went in there. And I ordered a beer. And I took a sip of that beer, and it was the best beer I've ever had in my whole life. It took me 45 minutes to drink it. It took me a half an hour to eat the sandwich, because the food tastes so good. I mean, what happens is when your psyche gets back together again, anxiety robs us of our awareness. You know what I mean? We're just so hypervigilant. Our ability to see the world is diminished because of the anxiety. It makes us difficult to focus on things that are pretty, or food that's good, or, my only qualifier for wine was either white or red and under $5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wasn't much of a connoisseur.
Right.
So anyway, we drive, and I'm just kind of going through this, how you feel. I'm just kind of like waking up every day. It didn't go away, didn't go away, didn't go away. And I don't want it to go away. So I got this mat. So so I'm using this thing, and it's a part of where I'm going. It was technology, but old technology rebooted for 100 years later. All right. And imagine this is a much bigger conversation. We're not going to get into it this time. But imagine the level of propaganda to hide good things so other things could be manifested and controlled.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it cost me $3,000 for the shot. All right. But hell, 20 minutes, $3,000, and you're good to go. I'm down. I'm all ready for that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I get the Beamer mat. The other thing the Beamer does is it gives me energy. So I went from working, 3 or 4 hours in a day physically to working, being able to put in a 9-hour day or 8-hour day. I was helping my buddy build his deck because we're in the middle of COVID and everything broke down and his deck crew didn't show up. So it was just me and my buddy Ben putting his deck together. And, there we were. And I got, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I got a new head and a new body and I'm pretty excited. But I don't, I don't even know how to appreciate it in a way. I'm just kind of like going through stuff. And anyway, we'll say that was 2 years ago. You know what I mean? So in the 2-year period, I'm not, suddenly I'm not drinking. And then I have this 2-year period. So I decided, hey, I'm going to go do something. I got to go do something. I got to get, I'm going to go get it. So I picked a job. Because you guys know, I've been writing about rivers and dams and fish, and I was in the fish business for a long time. So I saw this job about working for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, working with salmon. I said, that looks kind of interesting. So I called them up. They said, you'd like to do this? I said, yeah. So what's it involved? They said, basically, we're taking that adipose fin off a salmon, little salmon. You clip the fin off, and that's all you got to do. And I said, really? I said, that sounds like fun. I said, what's it pay? They said, yeah, it pays $20 an hour. And we pay for your hotels. You travel around the state and pay for mileage, this and that. I said, sign me in. Yeah. So my wife goes, well, that sounds like fun. Do they need help? So anyway, Ruby and I spent almost 2 years, 2 6-month seasons clipping salmon around the state. So we'd start in Astoria. And so anyway, in the midst of all that stuff, I'm handling fish. I'm able to stand at a sink for 8 hours a day and do a simple job, which I've never been able to do in my life. And I enjoyed it immensely. It was just a lot of fun. Great people, weird environments, fun environments, fish hatcheries, and pretty mellow work. It wasn't like a killer schedule. We'd start, we'd get a late start on Monday and leave early on Fridays. And sometimes we'd get a batch of fish done. And we were always someplace really interesting. So it was always fun out there in the middle of the woods. So anyway, last summer, I started not feeling good. So, and I'm also at the simultaneous, all these things apply. Is that, I'm scribbling, doing some writing, and as I always have been, and looking to fix some pieces up. And I discover AI in a way. I'm like, well, can this help me with my writing? Can it, and so suddenly I have an English professor, critiques my writing, tells me how to make it better. I get my writing critiqued. I make it better. I'm doing all this stuff and my writing's improving. And in a sense, I'm collaborating with this machine in this really strange way. And I'm learning how to do it. It's pretty far out. I'm like, man, this is really interesting. Anyway, and I'm not feeling good. And I'm not feeling good in ways that, down there in the basement.
Right. Locking yourself in the basement with your computer.
Yes. With my computer in the basement close to a toilet, kind of thing. So anyway, so I'm not feeling good, but at the same time, I'm seeing cool stuff. I'm seeing this run of salmon at the Bonneville Dam and, up this little creek. This was really fascinating. And it fed all my dark political thoughts at the time. It's called Tanner Creek, and it's right at the bottom of the Bonneville Dam. And I go down there one day, and I mean, this creek is just jammed with salmon. Now I'm working about a half a mile away at the big salmon, at the big salmon hatchery, and I'm thinking, I wonder how this factors into what's going on there. And there was this building there that I never really paid much attention to. It had windows and, public go in there. It was a cannery. I didn't realize this. It was a full-on salmon cannery in a way. They weren't canning salmon, but it was a slaughterhouse. So this little creek wound up, and they took the creek and turned it into a concrete maze for about 150 yards. So they'd capture all the salmon, and the salmon that came in there were tules, were wild Chinooks and farm Chinook, or called hatchery Chinooks. Right. So these, they had 3 or 4 breeds of salmon coming up there, and they would separate them out. And the only ones that got to go upriver in the big truck, in the happy truck, I call it, was the wild salmon. Everything else went to the natives, went Oregon Fish and Wildlife, there was all this, and it was just like, man, it was all for the slaughter, except the very, very few wilds going upriver. But anyway, as an aside, I'm looking at myself, I'm thinking, man, they're going to get, it was like this dark sense that there's no way out.
Yeah. Waiting for that happy truck.
You want to get into the happy truck. So anyway, shortly after that, I had a doctor's appointment. The doctor sent me to a oncologist. Not an oncologist, a guy that does the gastroenterologist that gave me a colonoscopy, and they told me I had cancer. And it was, what do they call it? It's T3, which is stage 3. It's, muscular rectal cancer, which is, so anyway, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what I thought, at the same time, Ruby, my wife, is always telling me to take, this detox stuff. In the meantime, after we got the Beamer, the lady we bought this Beamer from got us involved with this detox stuff. Take this stuff, you detox 2 things. One is anti-inflammatory stuff, is detoxing pathogenic stuff, and the other one is detoxing heavy metals, which is okay. But me, I'm like a typical husband that does what his wife's, take this, it'll make you live a long time, and and you forget. Did you remember? No, I forgot. So I'm forgetting and not remembering, and kind of struggling along with this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what do I do now? So in the middle of it all, just 2 weeks before, and I'd have conversations with people, and I'd look online and I'd see this cancer word down there floating around with some of my issues. I was like, I don't have cancer. I feel good. Yeah, I'm okay. But I wasn't feeling good, and I wasn't okay. So
did the doctor give you like a life expectancy at that point?
No, that was a little later. It's by degrees. First you won the prize, then they'll tell you how they're going to mail it to you. So anyway, so I thought to myself, well, I'll, what am I going to do? And my wife, very proactive, she says, you need to get on the Beamer. You need to. And I said, okay. I said, okay. Okay. And the other thing is that I was glad I was sane for this part of the adventure. The level of anxiety that can come on from all that, the extra layer of wildness is just, too much. So I said, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to look at that. So I said, now what do you got here? Now, what is this stuff? And what is this stuff? And then our dear brother Dave, one day, he says, Tim, you ever heard of hydrogen peroxide? Of course I've heard it. I got some under my sink. He said, no. He says, this is the other hydrogen peroxide. Really? Food grade, this and that. I said, and I laughed, he says, oh yeah, okay, whatever. So when I got online, I really did a deep dive into a couple of things. One is Bill and Steve were telling me about the carnivore diet, because I realized I need to get rid of sugar and bread and all those evil things. Change my diet. And I just want to show you something here. This is my world now. This is gourmet sardines.
Oh, sardines are good. Yeah. I love sardines.
That's my world now. That came from old Stevie. Stevie sent that to me because we had a long discussion on sardines. I told him that they're officially, the Portuguese Vintage Collection is sponsoring this episode today.
Let's hope they send a check.
Yeah. Free check.
So anyway, I, by degrees, all these pieces, the Beamer machine and these drugs and Dave's little thing, I put them all together. So this is where the AI comes in. So I said, you get there in front of it. And I had to kind of not deprogram it, but at least get it to speak English to me. And I realized that everything I'm doing is, hasn't been tested, by the FDA. It's stuff's been tested. It's over the counter stuff. There's nothing toxic in anything I'm taking. But
except for the sardines, maybe.
Except for the sardines, a little mercury in there, possibly. But I had these, a regular detox product, an anti-inflammatory product, and the hydrogen peroxide plus the Beamer. That's what I had. That was my foundation to move forward. And I wasn't feeling good. And I'm not going to get into incontinence much.
Okay, good. But
I stopped walking on the beach because of the fear of incontinence. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So when you said you're uncomfortable, is it mainly just your digestive, or you just didn't feel good? I mean, what?
Well, I was, my bowels were screwed up.
Sure,
I was, just all sorts of stuff. I mean, it was just feeling weird. You just, you can't put your put the tail on the donkey, but it's
not right.
It's kind of like people talking about the deep state. They don't quite know who it is or where it is, but it's there.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's messing up your life.
Yeah.
It's messing up your life, and literally your ass is on the line.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So, it makes you think. I mean, obviously, and then the other thing is it breaks your sense of continuity about where life was going to go and how it was going to go and what you're going to do. And so I start doing this thing, and I take each thing I have, I run it through the AI, and I say, evaluate this product. How is it? It says, it's great. It's a great product. How about this product? It's a great product. How about the hydrogen peroxide? Hydrogen peroxide was discovered in 1813.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, it's been, and what it is hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. And basically it's got a tiny oxygen molecule that can go into a cell, one of the few that can. And basically, if you dilute it with distilled water, depending on the food grade rate, if it's a 12% or a 35%, whatever, you get it down to where it's a 1 or 3% level, depending on how you want to, move forward. So I've been taking both 3 and 1.5% venues on it, just sort of trial and error, see how things go. So that was a start in, kind of like the middle of September, end of September. I just started really kind of getting more dialed in. When the cancer thing came in, that was only a month ago. That's October, 6 weeks ago, something like that.
Wow.
So in that 6 weeks, so I started this program where I took this stuff, what I call a sort of a crisis mode. I was taking my detox stuff every hour. I was taking all these 3 things, just a few, small doses every hour in the first month. And I mean, pissing like a racehorse. I mean, the amount of toxins coming out of my body, plus drinking a lot of fluid. So you're just kind of flushing things out. And I mean, that went on for weeks. And the other thing I did is after I got friendly with the machine, when I say friendly, once the machine has a sense of who you are, what you are, how you are, it has a body of information built up. It can retrieve that information and reconfigure it. So back to my point about the 3 products I was using, I asked them, is there any synergy in these 3 products? I have cancer. What do you think? Theoretically, how would they work? I always use that word, theoretically.
So you're using the AI.
I'm speaking directly to the machine.
Right.
I call him Dr.
Yeah, ChatGPT.
Dr. Ghost. And I have the upgraded, I pay $20 a month for the upgraded version.
Sure.
So I'm talking to Dr. Ghost, and you go, it just says, yes, these are all enormously synergistic together. The toxic product does this, gets rid of toxins. The other one gets rid of pathogenic elements, live elements, and that balances out whatever's going to go on with your hydrogen peroxide treatments, da, 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 and I said, wow, that's amazing. And then it prints out a big schedule for me. Take this dose this many times, do this. And plus I was able to give it my medical, my charts, from my CT scan, from the three doctors, my MRI, give them my charts, gave them all my charts, reviews all my charts based on your chart, and it just had a treatment program for me. And then I said, oh yeah, by the way, I had this Beamer thing. What'll that do? Well, basically, and I'm trying to stay within the boundaries. I'm not here to cure cancer. I'm just here to get well. Okay. Make my body whole.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying this does this. I'm just saying that in the 6 weeks that I've been doing it, I started to walk. Well, I haven't been because I'd be swept out to sea, in the last week or so. So I've been kind of staying off the beach. But a week ago, I was walking on the beach 6 days in a row, pretty much 3 miles a day on the beach barefoot.
Oh, wow.
And continent. And,
And what would somebody who wasn't receiving treatment or receiving chemo, where would they be at 6 weeks? I mean, what's the comparison?
Excellent question. Basically, fatigue, brain fog, a lot of incontinence, meaning that I know what they're talking about because, it's like a 4-alarm fire. You got to take, got to go to number 2. You know what I mean? You got to frickin' get after it. I mean, it's a run, don't walk situation. Right. You get that first little signal, it's not like, I think, let me go get my my newspaper and, right. No, none of that stuff. I mean, you're just after it. So now though, I have control, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a little personal, but I'm just saying it's the reality of the world we're in, our ability to exercise control. And one of the things about cancer and everything else that happens when we're sick is a loss of control. We lose control not only of our bodies, but we lose control of our lives. So it becomes a big psychological drama. So part of the deal that I'm involved in is how do you bring down the drama of what's going on and how do you move forward? And then in the meantime, I'm not denying reality. So a friend of mine, he's a doctor, and I go have dinner with him, and and I'm in there. I'm in the hospital system. I mean, I am in the system.
So you're not doing chemo yet, right?
Not yet. And I don't think I am. The thing is, I was going to get to that, is that I had to go through, get these charts. Then, it's a slow thing. You're in line. So you set up an appointment. So the cancer lady, she's a nurse practitioner, calls me and talked to me for a solid hour on what I'm going to be getting, what it's going to take, what's going to happen to me, and what the after effects are and how long. So basically, I'll be taking 2 cancer drugs, Folfox and some other thing, which is basically a little machine that you tie, and it's got a pump. It just recirculates everything. So basically, in the first treatment, I'll probably lose most of my immune resistance. And then that has to be bolstered by other things. You know what I mean? They got to make you sick and then keep you well at the same time, which is kind of like a balancing act. And so in the meantime, I'm just there. I said, how do you feel? The guy reads me, the doctor reads me, all this stuff. The oncologist reads me, says, are you this, or are you this, or are you this? Which are the normal, and I asked the machine, what is normal for this stage? And he read it off, and he was right in line with what the doctor says. Brain fog, this, your heart, blood pressure's high, whatever, all that sort of stuff. The other thing is no one said anything about how to get better or how to maintain myself in between these times. So basically, after the cancer lady got off, they told me what they were going to do, what their plan was. The plan was 3 months of chemo, then have an operation, and then another 3 months of chemo after the operation. And they basically said that based on where the cancer was, that they could basically save, the part where the sun shines. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But at the same time, I'm getting this information, and I'm not saying from the machine said you're going to, I'm just saying that I said, okay, it's day, whatever heck day it was. I just took a mile walk. I just took a 2-mile walk. I just took a 3-mile walk. I just took another. What does this mean if I can do this? And I said, my head is clear. I'm breathing well. I'm alert. I'm conscious. I feel, kind of in control of my work, like I can,
Right.
I'm not depressed and I feel pretty good. And, basically, and it got into this very kind of detailed, what I would call normal biomarkers, meaning these days I look at my life in terms of biomarkers. How am I doing incrementally? You're kind of looking at the John, you're looking at, you're looking at everything, how do I feel? How did I sleep last night? So my sleeping's improved. My control of things important has improved, or there's, as they would say in polite language, my pelvic floor has been strengthened. So anyway, so it's been interesting. And, you go up and down, though. I mean, it's not like, the big thing is your own sense of legitimacy. You know what I mean? Like, well, I'm just dancing in the dark here with some, some hoochie goochie products, and this and that. But at the same time, I can't deny what's going on with me. And it's strong enough. I mean, it's like, what's the way forward? I mean, really, what's the way forward? How am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And so at this particular junction point, without, drawing a hard line in the sand, I don't know how I can go on the chemo ride. I just don't know. And another factor I want to throw in that I haven't talked about much is the carnivore diet has changed me in ways that I'm still surprised, in that I don't get hungry. I'm like, why don't I get hungry? Then I realized, I have to study up on it. I asked my doctor, my online guy here, the AI fella. I says, hey, how come I don't feel hungry? That's because you're eating meat. Meat goes down into your lower colon for digestion. In your lower colon, it'll send up a little signal, or what's called a leptin. That leptin signal tells your brain that you're not hungry, because you're to digest meat's a different animal. Then the other thing with the carnivore diet is it's an uptake in nutrient availability, meaning that there's more nutrients available to your body. Your body's digesting more of the food, and you're not feeding the beast any sugar or anything else. Plus, you're creating these fatty acids, which are really important for your diet. So, or for your life. I mean, basically for your whole body. So I found it to be pretty much a whole body experience. I mean, I'm not really, polite conversation is, how you doing? You know what I mean? And that's, it's kind of like, how am I doing? Just like your head starts spinning because you've got a lot more going. You're a lot more focused on what's happening. And I remember, if you're, in a sense, I've been following a lot of the political stuff on the Trump side of the coin, and everybody's talking about waking up, you got to get awake and all this kind of stuff. And I'm finding that it's really, well, that's one thing, waking up. But to me, it's the other side of the coin that I wrestle with more, is the whole idea of, you're taking on responsibilities that you didn't think you could take on. You know what I mean? Suddenly you're wrestling with, and everybody looks at you like, hey, you don't know what you're doing. I'm like, well, maybe I do, maybe I don't. But our bodies aren't meant to be these as mysterious as everybody's made them out to be. And the products I'm using have been enormously helpful. I mean, I'm alive,
Right.
and that's the thing that,
and you appear, even talking to you on this platform, you appear more energetic, very coherent. I mean, you're not looking like, how you would imagine somebody who's suffering from cancer.
Well, the thing is, I'm not going to trade in my trauma for clicks. I mean, that's not the whole idea here.
Right.
It's
so next
not,
time we want
like,
you to wear a robe and look more sickly.
Yeah, that'd be great. We need the clicks, Tim. We need the clicks.
We need the clicks bad.
Well, I was reading a lady who says, like, that's the thing these days, people trading in their trauma,
Right.
wounded, I'm offended, I'm here, I'm there. So what if you get better? I'm like, well, I just seem to be getting better for reasons that,
Damn it,
you know,
Tim.
huh?
It's a damn it.
Damn it. Yeah. I mean, so it's been really a ride that I feel is really profound. And I'm not trying to, I'm just saying, I watched Javier. This is cool. I watched Javier Milei,
President of Argentina.
the president of Argentina, talk to Lex Friedman. You know that guy? Lex Friedman.
Yeah.
So the president of Argentina is talking to Lex Friedman, and he gets into all kinds of stuff. But he asked him a question. He says, as president of Argentina, what is your goal? And the guy says, I want to make Argentina the freest country in the world. I went,
Wow.
I've never heard any leader in anywhere, anyhow, say they wanted their country to be the freest in the world. And I was thinking about that comment, very deeply philosophical in my own. He says, what do you want, Tim? I says, I want my body to be the freest body in the world, in a way. You know what I mean? And if that's possible, it's just kind of a wild thing, but suddenly I'm free of a lot of the freeze, fight, or flight attractors that make life tricky. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I didn't get this, and it's like, you got a bunch of life out there to reflect on. And now you got this to reflect on, and you're kind of like, oh man, now I won't be able to milk the cow or do whatever you thought you were going to do.
Unburdening yourself in the present from what was burdening you in the past.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm burdened in some ways by the past, because basically the stuff that I'm burdened by in the present comes from all those good times, way back when. Not to say that everybody's going to get it, but I had a lot of them. I had a lot of really great times. But I think, back to Kennedy, Kennedy's thing of taking on the, these folks. I mean, it's pretty fascinating. So that's basically where I am. So it really is the technology we have in our hands today, some of the products that are on this market, the products available, not just their availability, but the ability of the products to get into our bloodstreams and take care of gigantic issues in a process. It ain't overnight. It's not, we're going to kill you to cure you type of thing. You know what I mean? But it does take a certain amount of focus, discipline.
Yeah, and there had to be some way of people healing themselves or finding healing before, the medical industrial complex kind of took over America.
Well, people did die younger 150 years ago. So we are living longer, but are people living healthier longer? Or, you look at, we have the most obese country in the world. I mean, our diet, I was watching this video and this guy was saying, he goes, the United States is no longer a republic. It's an oligarchy run by large corporations. And they've got their hands so deep in government that, and the money is so just to get, and I know I'm getting off track, but just to get elected. You're on track.
You're exactly
just to get elected costs so much money, nobody can do it anymore. You can't reach. That may be changing with the internet. Maybe you can reach more people, but it's still so expensive to get time, to get FaceTime with people, to be able to travel, move, get ground root, all this grassroots stuff that, you can't do it without huge amounts of money. And the only places that can provide that kind of money are large corporations, and they own you. They own. There might be a few exceptions to that, but by and large, they literally own and they control the information flow through the government to us. And that's why we see all this bullshit about diet. Oh, keep eating the pyramid, lots of grains, lots of this, lots of that. And it's like, it's not even food anymore. You're not even eating food. There's no nutrition. Any nutrition is synthetic, like the food itself. It's frankenfood anyway, blah, blah, blah. But
that's why we push the seed treatment, Mike.
There you go, Chris. That's why Soruba has its place in our videos.
Well, the thing is that it's right there with all that stuff. It's like, what constitutes the word good? You know what I mean? It's like a battle of language, you know? And I mean, and everybody's heard, I don't know, it's like the lingua franca of what happened with the cigarette companies, you know? The cigarette companies were up against the wall in the 80s. What do? They bought the food companies. What they do with the food companies? They basically integrated their psychology and their chemistry, their knowledge of addictive chemistry into the food industry, and basically just turn that dial up to 10.
Yeah.
You know, and here we are today, you know? So if you're eating, I'm not picking on anybody's product, but potato chips or whatever you eat, you know, it's processed in the upper colon, and it never sends a signal that you had enough.
Yeah. Yep. They say your brain on sugar lights up like you're on heroin. The same chemical reaction that happens when your body ingests heroin happens when your body ingests sugar. I mean, it lights up in the same way. And you look at the amounts of sulfites and I mean, it's just unbelievable. And you look at people. I mean, we're everybody. If you're eating anywhere out that's processed food, you're probably 30 to 40 pounds overweight.
And the other thing is, it's ideology. It's ideology. It's religion almost. People are so emotionally attached to these things that the advertising doesn't have to make sense. It just bypasses reason and just tickles your fancy, you know.
And a friend that was he owned a candy store for quite a while. He said that is probably the best drug in the world. You know, this candy store was doing so well. People love sugar. I mean, they're addicted to it. It's like, he said, it's like being a drug dealer. You just have the same.
You should open a vape shop. You want to see people get
candy vape, candy and vape.
But I think the idea, you know, Mike, you were doing, you know, you've had some experience with the psilocybin and all these things that are going on now. Anything that can bring people into the present in ways that matter, is really a big deal, because what they're going to see is just the level of psychological influence without people's knowledge. It's just so big. I mean, I did some research. Why did Grandpa join the Army in 1917? All right. Mm-hmm. And there's this thing called the Committee for Public Information, which basically set the platform for all public affairs, advertising, and public relations from 1917 until now. The guy's the father of all this stuff, his guy's name is Edward Bernays. And basically it's the psychological being able to deliver the mail without it having to make sense.
Yeah.
It's like feeding people's emotions. The whole thing in World War I was all about feeling great about your country and hating the Huns.
Yeah, getting the Huns. Oh yeah.
That was it. And I mean, and that's what they sold it on. And they had a thing called the Minutemen, the 4-Minute Men. And the 4-Minute Men, there were 75,000 of them across the United States, speaking in every church, every movie theater, every public hall, every Boy Scout meeting. Anytime there was a group of people together, these 4-Minute Men were there. And the reason they called them the 4-Minute Men was 4 minutes was the time it took to change the reel at the movie theater. So they had to time the message, you know what I mean, to slide that message in. I mean, it was just remarkable. So it's like now we have social media, we have the whole cancel culture thing, we have all these other devices which are in the same themes, the same tempo, the same. It's just wild. It's just such a wild world we're in.
Now it's the Wild West with the internet and the misinformation, disinformation, sharing of information, communication. I mean,
I just say that, you know, if people watch this, I mean, they're going to say, how do I get unstuck? How do I get uncrazy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how do I get unstuck? I mean, I'm this, I'm that, I'm here, I'm there. And these people, and I have friends and stuff and they're angry beyond, you know, I mean, wasn't happy when, you know, things don't go my way in one sense, but I got to move on, you know, and we've got to keep moving forward. But I think people will see, once they understand how they were manipulated, and refocus their reason, on the reasons, I think it's going to change the platform of things. It's like, I like talking about old Javier, because the old Milei, the president of Argentina, just because they said, well, I asked him another question. He says, well, aren't you afraid you're going to be assassinated because you've got so much opposition? He says, no. He says, this is about freedom. He says, if I die, I'm going to be dying doing something to make people free. It's important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what?
He's free. Yeah, he said himself.
You know what I mean?
Free.
He's free to do what he's doing. You know what I mean? And I mean, and in a sense, that philosophy meant a lot to me, because I could say, well, I'm free. I want to be free, kind of doing what I'm doing. There was a parallel there. Even Trump, I mean, if he didn't win, they would have killed him or put him in prison. They would have done something to him. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's these times where you got to pick what you're going to pick, and get after it, kind of thing. So because my ass is on the line, as I like to say.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start.
Say that.
I don't want to say too many. I'm not saying this to be untoward, but I was joking with someone about saving the old white assholes as a group of people, kind of thing, which might have some resonance somewhere, but who knows? But
in oncology, it's big. It's a big term in oncology.
So anyway,
well, you know what? This is
Mike.
kind of, well, no, I mean, it's kind of interesting, and I know they use the government uses, and I mean, you guys know this. I am really fascinated by UFOs and these things, and what really blew my mind was the way they use misinformation to label. So what they do is, where did the term UFO nut come from? You know what I mean? It came from the media was getting talking points from the Department of Defense through this, I can't remember, it's Operation Blue Book. They were told to say certain things, like they would use the term, oh, it's swamp gas. Oh, and yeah, these people are UFO nuts. And then, but you just think, well, wait a second. These guys they're not nuts. They're people in positions of authority. They're air traffic controllers, commercial and airline pilots. And a lot of these people weren't, doctors, lawyers, these different people that saw this stuff, but there was the way they undermine people's testimony is all of a sudden, the minute you mention that you saw something that didn't fit the norm, you were now a nut. And people were able to make fun of you because you're now a nut and you saw something that doesn't even exist. And yet now they're coming out, they're saying, well, yeah, we are following all this stuff. But what I'm saying is they use this format.
Right, yeah.
They use the format to undermine all kinds of stuff. And you see it across the board. You see it in the food industry. You see it in the way they treated the way they've treated Trump, the way they've treated a lot of Republican leaders, and just all this stuff. They use the same methods, and it's kind of like you see it happen across the board. And it's like, wow, this is so amazing to see. Our government is, actively, lying to us on a daily basis,
enslaving us.
Yeah. What's that?
It's actively enslaving us.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, anyway, it's crazy. To me, it's crazy. It's like with the food, we're getting lied to about.
Sure.
The pharmaceutical companies are pumping us full of garbage, and it's all about follow the money. It's all about the money.
Well, if you take another path, then you become a nut or a freak or a conspiracy
theorist. Look what they did to Kennedy on the inoculation issue.
Right.
I mean,
I think
anti-vaxxer and
you're an anti-vaxxer. Well, that just explains everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Regardless of what the information says, regardless of what anything says, you're an anti-vax guy. Oh, you're a conspiracy theory nut. Oh yeah. Even though a lot of those things turned out to be true, you're crazy. Yeah. Even though you run maybe a multi-million-dollar business and you have a lot of authority, the minute you're all of a sudden, okay, you're crazy because you're a conspiracy nut, you're an anti-vaxxer, you have no credibility now, whatever you do. And anyway.
Well, it's the only, it's, if there's any reticence on my part, just even sharing and trying to construct the language with I share and what I'm sharing and why I'm going and how I'm getting there, it's framed by all these experiences, because one of the things they've the three great tools of propaganda: fear, shame, and guilt.
Yeah.
And having a good Catholic education, I understand those things. And so
the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's right. So anyway, but these issues, and nothing against, Catholic, I learned how to read and write, but my point is that, yeah, these are big, gigantic topics. But the thing is now, where we sit now, me saying what I'm saying, and even having the hope, and if the thing I have that I didn't have before was hope. Hey, this kind of works. There's something going on here. Somebody didn't tell me something here. Nobody told me nothing. Nobody said, hey, you know what? You've got this stuff. This is what you can do right now. Nobody. They offered me nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No alternatives.
In that time, with no alternatives, I was proactive enough to really understand where I've been, and this thing, when I broke down that thing with that dual sympathetic reset shot, I mean, it just changed my world. It was just like, what? Wow, where's this been? And I got pissed at my psychotherapist VA guy, but then I realized that the VA was the main door that OxyContin was able to come into the United States. It was the VA testing on veterans.
Yeah. Oh, geez. And that's brutal. Stuff's brutal.
So, there's just things going on that, and I don't know if it was OxyContin, but it was one of those drugs that the VA was the main door, because they had this hostage crowd of patients that were traumatized. And, and if you're, and it's a gateway into the whole universe of federal agencies. So anyway, and after it was over, I was just like, it wasn't like, well, I feel better. It was like I had a new brain or something. It's just like, wow. And I'm not saying it reduced it by probably 80%. I still got 20% floating around down there. I'm itchy. I haven't changed much, but my ability to navigate life changed completely, and
I think,
I look back and wow.
I think that's a good point to kind of conclude our first episode of, this journey. And I think it's good to hear from Tim and your experience. And the most important thing I'm taking out of it is there's hope. You have hope. You're six weeks into, finding out you have cancer, and, you're dealing with it you're kind of dealing with it, like you said, you're just becoming free, you're becoming well-being, and that is just, the cancer seems to be going away just because of your well-being and positive attitude and, looking for alternatives.
Yeah. Let me just ask you a quick question, Tim. Have they tested you since then? And is there any, if they have, was there any difference in their?
They have. The last test I got was an MRI, and that was, and the day after I got the MRI, I met with my doctor, and and he's aware of what I'm doing, but he's very allopathic. But no, I haven't. And the other thing, and to that exact point, Mike, I was looking at maybe getting what they call a PET scan in December to see how things are going. I don't want to be, I'm not saying, hey, be in the dark or don't pay attention, but if something's working, you want to know it's working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sleeping good. I mean, which
Yeah.
is, if you got a cloud hanging over your head, you don't sleep, like
Yeah.
it's just eating at you. So I'm sleeping good, finding, more and more, traction in the moment, and a lot of it's just psychological, so.
Good.
All right, that sounds great. No, we'll do this again next week. We're gonna keep a sharp eye on you, Tim.
Yep.
All right. Well, great chatting with you guys. I like your little cockpit thing. That gives me a
Yeah,
sense
right.
of like you're real pilots and you know what you're
Like
doing
we-
and all
we-
that sort
like
of
it's
stuff.
almost
There's
like
just
we know
the
what
air
we're
of
doing.
confidence and competence, Really.
We're definitely struggling with confidence on this on so many levels, but yeah.
Well, it's been fun talking to you guys. We'll talk to
All
you
right.
soon.
Well,
All right,
I
Tim.
appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we'll talk to you all
Adios,
later.
amigos.